Comrades, good afternoon. I think we've gone through the morning now already. My time is showing 12 p.m. from where I am. So good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for really making the time for being here. I see we still have a number of other comrades that are coming through. I have seen at least one of our speakers already who's been able to come through. So I think that we should maybe get the ball rolling. With the objective, of course, of trying to make sure that we are done by 2 p.m. at the latest. My name is JP Lowe, by the way. I am editor of UMRABULO at OR Tambo School. At the school itself, I also perform the role of a communications advisor. I want to in particular pick the name of Comrade Brian Hlongwa here, who's also a co-host of this session. Comrade Brian really also assists in making sure that if, this a new era that we're in, the new normal as it's called, sometimes things get disconnected because connections are not so strong. So if that was to happen, Comrade Brian will be steering the ship forward. So good afternoon, comrades. I thought that perhaps before we even get into the meat of today's detail, we should really observe a moment of silence following the passing of someone I would like to refer to as a people's activist lawyer, George Bezos, who passed away on the 9th of September and was laid to rest about 2 days ago or so. He passed away at the age of 92. So I'd really request for all of us if we can just observe a moment of silence, please, for a few seconds. Thank you, comrades. Thank you all very much for that. Of course, we do extend our heartfelt condolences to the family of Comrade George Bezos, his loved one and his friends. And I actually should add the fact that, of course, in the past few days, a number of cadres, their spears have fallen. We do also recognize them also at this particular moment. We'd like to say, long live the spirit of the people's activist lawyer, George Bezos, long live. Now, today's UMRABULO dialogue is somewhat a continuation of a conversation we've started last week. And we also hope to continue into the next weekend again, as September is observed as Heritage Month. So it's really taking place within that particular context, happening under the theme, History that Shaped Today's ANC and Transformation Agenda, and with a perspective from the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, as well as the Western Cape. Last week, we started with the provinces of Limpopo, Gauteng, and Northwest, Pirima. And we will end it next week by taking a look at the KZN and Mpumalanga and the Free State perspective. Now, the UMRABULO dialogues of last week, this week, and coming week is arranged under the auspices of the ANC and Alliance Campaigns Committee, and of course, OR Tambo School. And I think to that extent, one would really like to recognize a number of comrades that made today's session possible. Comrade Phoebe Potridel Ngubule, who is a board member of OR Tambo School, but also general manager of the ANC, a person who really kick-started organization around these particular sessions. And suggested that this is the way that we should be going. And then my leader, who's also at OR Tambo School, quite invested in political education in the organization, Comrade Sly. Thank you once again, leader, for making it possible for us to have today's session. Comrade Sylvester Siboza. Mandla Kwane at Lutuli House also, thank you, comrade. And of course, also our provincial secretaries, as well as the political education heads and political education officials across our provinces. Thank you to all of you, comrades. Comrades, can I just hear from one of you? I hope I'm audible, right? You can hear me. Let me pick you, Comrade Brian. Can you hear me, Comrade Brian? So I need to be
Yes, I
careful.
can
I'm
hear
not
you.
talking to myself alone. Ah, okay, great stuff. Thank you. Thank you. All right, comrades. Now, under the theme of history that shaped today's ANC and transformation agenda, in fact, before even I do that, I can't forget Audrey Masemola, comrades. I mean, she's the one really who's helping us to put all of these things together as we are right now. The Induna in charge of choosing who is admitted and who's not admitted. So if you get sliced out, please don't blame me for it. Audrey's email and number, I think, is on the poster. Go to her directly. But the brief here is really very simple. If you don't see your name and surname when you are in the waiting room, we will not give you access. So please make sure that your name and surname is reflected. Otherwise, we will unfortunately not be able to give you access to this platform, regrettably. Now, as I was saying, that today's theme is history that shaped today's ANC and transformation agenda. That is the theme of today's talk. We're hoping really to answer three interrelated, interconnected questions. One is which major events in history has shaped the ANC and the transformation agenda in your specific province, to our speakers, of course. And secondly, consequently, who is directing the discourse and outlook of heritage liberation? And why is this the case in your particular province? So we want to ask the question, of course, historically, and also we would like to take a look at the present and understand what is the state of play on this day and what its impact has been on the ground, if you like. Then the third question we seek to ask is that, is such discourse and outlook an advancement of struggles for a national democratic society? If not, what is needed to ensure that such a realignment is realized? So again, bring it to the present, but also do a projection really into the future, sort of like giving some ideas of what actionable points needs to be pursued moving us forward. Now, to navigate us through this conversation, through this detail, our comrades, who each one of them are based in the respective provinces I've mentioned earlier. We have Comrade Keith Gottschalk, who's from the Western Cape province. And then there is Comrade Patrick Mapilo. Comrade Patrick himself hails from the Northern Cape. And then we'll also have Comrade Fezeka Nkomonye, who comes from the Eastern Cape. So those are our speakers. We will request that each one of them address us for about 20 minutes. And then after that, as is custom by now, we'll then open the floor really for questions, discussion, dialogue. It is a dialogue, so the objective here is not for you to be given all the answers, but for you also to contribute and make some of your own views known. The session is live on Facebook, so there you can continue the discussion, comrades. The chat group here, you're welcome in there also to raise some of your particular viewpoints, other than the fact that we will take a few hands at the later point. These sessions will remain on Facebook and also will be loaded onto OR Tambo's website page. So you'll be able also in future to make reference to those for your own benefit. Now, our first speaker today, Comrade Fezeka, just by way of introduction, Comrade Fezeka is currently serving as MEC of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture there in the Eastern Cape. She served in the legislature of that province from around 2014 until 2019, that's about 2 years, but also was there for about a year from 2009 and 2010, where of course she fulfilled all kinds of different roles and responsibilities in the legislature. She also served as head of ministry in MEC, responsible for provincial planning and treasury. That's a function she performed from 2010 to about 2014. So somebody who, in some ways, I suppose one can say, has the experience of implementation, of also being sort of like a bureaucrat, doing the research, the writing of things and so on. And on the other hand, also being settled with the political. She's currently doing her master's in Comrade Abel. Please mute your mic. I will try to mute everybody again just in a moment. Please just make sure that you are all muted, comrades, kindly. Now, Comrade Fezeka is currently doing her master's in development studies, and she says that she's an avid runner who's participated in various marathons. Comrade Fezeka, if I had to leave anything out in your introduction, that's the one part I couldn't leave. And I hope for many of us, it will be a motivator of sorts of, you know, what we ought to be doing. So Comrade Fezeka, with those few introductory words, my leader, we're going to start with you first, doing it alphabetically, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and then Western Cape. Over to you, Comrade Fezeka.
Thank you so much, Comrade JP. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, JP, and your co-host, Comrade Brian. ANC at the National Executive Committee.
Okay, your line is cutting a little bit.
The Provincial Executive.
Your line is cutting a little bit. I think it's the strength of the connection. It says your network, that the network bandwidth is low.
Network.
Yeah, are you able to move around a little bit?
I'll try, Comrade JP. I really will try.
Okay.
Let me just check if I can't find a better network connection.
Okay, let me go to Comrade Patrick then.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Not a problem. While I try to find a better net connection.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So let's go to Comrade Patrick. Comrade
All right,
Patrick,
not a problem.
I hope you have joined us already. You see, there's not a disadvantage of not being the one who does the admissions, because now you're not too sure if the speaker is already is here with us. Comrade Patrick, if you could please just give an indication, try to unmute yourself. If you are here, I don't see your name on the list as we speak currently, but I'm definitely sure Comrade Keith is with us already. Comrade Keith, are you here with us?
Hi, Com. Yes, I'm here and I can see you.
Ah, great stuff. Okay, let me introduce you then, Comrade Keith. I thought we'll do it alphabetical from Eastern, Northern to Western Cape, but looks like we're taking it from the back to the front now, as opposed to from the front to the back, if you like. Now, Comrade Keith himself is somebody who has lived and I would say continues to epitomize our liberation struggles. In the 60s already, when some of us are not even born yet, Comrade Keith, I don't even think I was a concept in the minds of my parents, by the way. But at that time, you revived the Radical Student Society, wrote for varsity newspaper, which really is one of those newspapers across the country under the banner of the South African Students Press Union, SASPU, that were pushing really quite progressive content in South Africa. Comrade Keith is an honorary vice president of NUSAS, the National Union of South African Students, which later came to merge with SANSCO and then form the SASCO that we all know of today. He was chairperson of the Civil Rights League, served in the Congress of SA Writers, and I guess it's a matter of a natural expectation that would have been in the United Democratic Front, the UDF, is somebody who has offered political studies at what I call University of the Working Class, better known as University of the Western Cape, UWC. And up to this point, I mean, Comrade Keith, in his pension days, off days as others would want to expect them to be, remains an active member of his branch, and is also somebody still involved in poetry and writers groups that he's been involved with for all these years. So Comrade Keith, with those few words also to yourself, I'll hand over to you, give you about 20 minutes to present, and then hopefully our other speakers will be able to come through. Over to you, Comrade Keith.
Our shouts are peaks in a range of voices. Our hands hold power in streets of strength. Our comrades are a million men and women. This was the spirit of the 1980s, comrades. This was the spirit of mobilization. The African National Congress is the oldest living party in Africa, 108 years old. But in a democracy, no party is entitled to rule forever. We need to win the trust of the voters every 5th year. And in India, the historic liberation movement today gets only about 1 out of 5 votes. So that is a warning to us. And comrades, we're here today because we committed to helping the ANC go stronger before the next election. We asked to talk about which major events in history shaped the African National Congress and the transformation agenda in the Western Cape. Well, as we know, the ANC was formed in 1912 to defend the people against dispossession from the land and to defend the small number of black men who had the vote for parliament and the province. And the same fight was again in 1936. Then in 1948, the apartheid regime came to power, enforcing racism from the cradle to the grave. And in 1952, it brought in the evil Dompas with a section 10(1)D. I'd urge all African comrades to ask your grandfather and your grandmother what they remember of section 10(1)D. This endorsed out, meaning banished, African wives and children out of the Western Cape to east of the so-called Iceland line on the Fishcat River. And race classification was enforced, pushing pencils for people here to decide if you were colored or white, and similar crude insults to divide Africans from colored persons. And throughout the 1950s, we had resistance against the group areas demolitions and the group areas forced mass removals. In District 6, maybe 60,000 people were driven out, and District 6 was demolished to the ground by bulldozers, and the people scattered everywhere from Bonteheuvel to Mitchell's Plain. Half the people in Simonstown were driven out to Slankop, which was then renamed Ocean View, and many other people were evicted from Claremont, Harfield Road, and Tramway Road communities. In the 1950s, the African National Congress held a mass meeting on the Graham Parade every fortnight at the weekends to spread the message and to encourage its members. And this continued until in 1960, the same time as Sharpeville, we had the Langa shootings, and the baby of Beatrice Manjati was shot dead. And then the regime banned our ANC in April 1960. The ANC went underground. Leaders like Christmas Tinto, Mountain Kambela, and many other comrades tried to set up underground structures of the ANC. And in Cape Town, Looksmart, Sowandle, and Goodley became the first detainee to be beaten to death by the special branch in detention. And we salute these martyrs of the Western Cape. From our affiliate organizations, writers and journalists like Alex Laguma, the lawyer Albie Sachs were driven into exile. And there were many years of repression, jailings, banning orders, and house arrest. And then in 1983, African National Congress supporters founded the United Democratic Front, which was launched in Mitchell's Plain. And we chose the slogan for the UDF of all here now. We want all our human rights. We want our human rights here, and we want our human rights now. And a new generation of leaders arose. Alan Bussack, Trevor Manuel, Abraham Rasool, Cheryl Carolus. The people's poet was Sandile de Kenny, whose rousing poems started up each big rally and meeting across Cape Town. And at the same time as the UDF, underground, comrades like Ashley Creel, Zelda Holtzman, Mike Kutsia were building Nkonto Izizwe. Above the ground, trade unions like SACTU, the Clothing and Textile Workers Union, NEHAWU, the Educational and Health Workers Union, Transport and General, all these were building the strength of comrades in parallel with the African National Congress. And finally, the people's pressure forced the regime to unban our African National Congress in 1990, and we set up branches everywhere in Cape Town. And through the 1980s, we held meetings and rallies, not only in Langa and Khayelitsha, but also in Bonteheuwel, Lavender Hill, Mannenberg, Mitchell's Plain, and other townships. And we saw crowds come to our meetings and rallies, but we did not see the faces of those who did not come to our meetings. And in 1994, the African National Congress suffered the shock of losing the election in Cape Town and losing the elections in most of the Western Cape. And we need to ask ourselves today, what do we need to do to realign politics to achieve a national democratic society here in the Western Cape? And comrades, here, the African National Congress needs to start a strategic conversation with itself. To give one example, about 6 or 7 years ago, Cape Town managers in the police, in the correctional services, and in other government departments suddenly started enforcing an extreme version of affirmative action under which they said that colored should be limited to being appointed to only 1 out of 12 jobs in Cape Town and to get only 1 out of 12 promotions in Cape Town. And the ANC suffered the backlash, the political backlash from this. Upsprung lots of little fringe organizations with names like the Khoisan this and Khoisan that. And in our dialogue, our discourse was dominated by the slogan, under apartheid we weren't white enough, under affirmative action we're not black enough. So our African National Congress needs to think strategically. We need to apply affirmative action strategically so that the ANC can win elections in the Western Cape. Comrades, another issue that dominates the discourse in which we contest for supremacy with our opponents is over corruption, which is every week on the front page of newspapers and on the social media. There, the Gabby Shapiro branch of the ANC 25 years ago passed a motion called Gifts to Leaders, which was implemented as the parliamentary standing rules and orders that every member of parliament must write down in a register every gift he or she receives so the media can discover, has that MP done anything in exchange for that gift over there. Corruption is no part of our heritage, and we need to always speak up against corruption. We need to insist that tenders go to the company offering the lowest price, not companies offering the highest price. Comrades, today is Heritage Month. It's the weekend closest to Heritage Day, and we asked to discuss the dialogue around heritage and around transformation in the Western Cape. Who is controlling this dialogue? Well, come to Cape Town and you find yourself driving down the JBM Hertzog Boulevard in the foreshore. Hertzog is honoring the father of the Calabar in the 1920s. The Hertzog was the one whose election manifestos made use of the K word. And off this road, you come into the D.F. Malanstraat, which is to honor the father of apartheid, the first apartheid prime minister who brought in the Dompas, the group areas, race classification, and all the other racist laws. And if you drive further down, you come into Anstradam Avenue to honor the most racist prime minister South Africa ever had, whose election slogan was Baaskap, and throughout his career used the K word more than any other Afrikaner nationalist. Now, even the city of Cape Town knew that this was wrong, and more than a decade ago, the Cape Town Metro set up the Kodali Commission, which proposed that racist names be removed from the streets and we choose names of people who deserve to be honored. And then, after that commission reported, the city of Cape Town was paralyzed. The DA, we can guess, was fearful of losing Afrikaner votes, so it did nothing. And I think there's a duty falls on all us ANC members to say, send those street names to the museum. Send those street signboards to the museum. There are plenty of people and events that are far more worthy of being honored than racists. If we go outside Cape Town, in the rest of the Western Cape, I want comrades to look around their hometown and see what are the names of the streets around them. For example, in Oudtshoorn, you've got a shopping mall with a parking lot. And in that parking lot, there's a 3-meter tall stone cairn. And on the side of that stone cairn, a plaque says this cairn is to honor all the brave soldiers on the border who fought the, quote, terrorists, unquote. That is, our MK freedom fighters are being smeared as terrorists. We can see who is dominating this dialogue, and it's our opponents and our former enemies, and we need to change this and to mobilize on these issues every Inheritance Month, every year, until we win the struggle to get rid of the names of racists off our streets. How do we advance our struggle? Well, comrades, the Gabby Shapiro branch has met monthly 11 months of the year for 30 years since we were formed in 1990. That is, we've had 330 branch meetings today. And Gabby Shapiro branch would like to send a friendly challenge to all other branches in the Western Cape to succeed in encouraging your comrades to come to monthly meetings so we have a living African National Congress. The Gabby Shapiro branch struggles and struggles, but it finally gets a quorum for its annual general meeting, even if we have to call that AGM 5 times, even 6 times, 7 times, but we finally get to organize the quorum to come. And this is a friendly challenge to all other ANC branches in the Western Cape to mobilize and get a quorum to come to an AGM so we may elect the branch executive committees and we can then hold the provincial conference, which is overdue. Further, each of us is more than an African National Congress member. We are a citizen, and democracy imposes duties and responsibilities on us. We are residents or ratepayers, and we have a duty to be active and join our local civic or ratepayers association, or not let it be dominated by our opponents. We have a duty to join whatever is important to the neighborhood in which you live. It may be a community policing forum, it may be a school governing board, but But democracy can only work if we're active on all these bodies. And so in conclusion, comrades, let all of us build our African National Congress before the 2020 elections arrive. Amandla.
Away too.
Thank you, Comrade Keith. Thank you very much. Essentially saying, go back and build the branch. Let's build those branches, comrades, and also become an activist within your own locality, within your own spaces. But thank you very much for that input, Comrade Keith. I'm going to go to Comrade Patrick. Comrade Patrick, who is from the Northern Cape and currently serving as executive mayor of Salt Lake Municipality. The comrades' previous roles includes those of MEC of Transport, Safety and Liaison, and also at some point he served as Environment and Nature Conservation MEC. Comrade Patrick has also served in the National Assembly from around 2014 until 2017. Is former provincial chair of the trade union SATU, the Teachers Union, South African Democratic Teachers Union, and is also serving now as a PEC and a Provincial Working Committee, PWC member. Comrade Patrick, with those introductory words, we are all ears for the next 20 minutes. Comrade Patrick. Let me see if I can assist you to unmute. I'm definitely sure I saw you on my list of people present today. So where's Comrade Patrick now? Okay, comrades, you can just bear with us just 1 second. Comrade Patrick was here, man. Looks like we might have lost him. Oh, we need a revolution around internet connectivity strength. I think that's probably one of the big challenges.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay, Comrade Patrick. I was getting worried, but we're all ears, my leader. We're at your mercy.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. Good afternoon. Well, the topic is quite interesting and it's quite profound. I will preface my input with the document as articulated by the South African Communist Party in 1962. I will just paraphrase it. I will not quote it verbatim. But the document itself analyzes the current challenges that the country of a special type, poverty, unemployment, and inequality. That is what was analyzed by the Communist Party in 1962. In 1969, we all know that the Morogoro Conference confirmed and affirmed the problems confronted by the liberation movement around colonialism of a special type. And we are all aware of the adoption of the document, the strategy and tactics document. I will just briefly quote it. That the document that the ANC adopted in 1969 articulated the contradictions the country was confronted with. It was a contradiction between the oppressor and the oppressed. And it characterized it as the Black majority, which includes Africans, Coloureds, and Indians, as oppressed by the white colonial racist state. And it clearly articulated a view that says the apartheid state could not be reformed, but it has to be totally overhauled. And in the context of the colonialism of a special type, is that the colonizer and the colonized were staying in the same territory. So therefore, our own understanding was that the colonizer was not going to pack his bags and leave the country like the other colonized African countries. So therefore, it required a concerted struggle to advance the revolution. That is how we, as the ANC at the time, we understood the concept of colonialism of a special type. But also it related to the system of laws that were created that excluded blacks. And as a result, it's only through an organized struggle that we will be able to defeat apartheid. So throughout its history and its inception, the ANC has understood the task at hand and what is to be done. That's why it has adopted all the different 4 pillars of the struggle to ensure that we achieve a democratic South Africa. But in our own understanding, the current ills confronted by the country, which is unemployment, underdevelopment, inequality, and exploitation, are as a result of the historical question that was articulated very well by the SACP in 1962 and the ANC as well in Morogoro and the subsequent years up to Kwabe. So therefore, as a result of that, we fully understood that the ANC has always been seized with improving the quality of life of our people and transform society as espoused by the Freedom Charter. Subsequent to that, after unbanning, to show that the ANC had the necessary vision, the understanding, and the clarity of thinking of what is to be done, there was this 1992 document, Ready to Govern, that prepared us for a post-apartheid South Africa. After the 1994 breakthrough, the ANC also adopted the Growth and Development Strategy, the RDP, by having its own office and its own analysis, which is an inclusive program of reconstruction and development of the country. So as a result of the closure, maybe the question that we must face is that, was it proper and opportune for us at the time to close the RDP office or to stop the RDP and replace it with GEAR and subsequent others? So these are the matters that we should pause and reflect on to say, is it maybe not where we derailed or we took a detour by abandoning the RDP? Let's come now to the Northern Cape perspective of the ANC in terms of transformation. Well, we have a rich history of waging colonial battles from the early 1880s, where the land of dispossession was a critical war for us because of the diamonds that were discovered that brought a whole flood of people to the Northern Cape and to Kimberley in particular. And out of those struggles, the chiefs, by then, they waged a relentless way in terms of ensuring they safeguard the wealth of the country, Kosi Toto, Kosi Janki, etc. And as a result, these are the foundations laid for subsequent leaders that followed after that. But the critical challenges that the movement has been faced with, has been seized with, is how then do we undo the effects and the burden placed on us by colonialism of a special type, and apartheid. Those are the ravages of apartheid that we have been confronted with. So in terms of transformation, we have a common understanding that transformation will not happen unless we have a united alliance. ANC strong, SACP strong, COSATU strong, SANCO strong, the Youth League, the Women's League, the Progressive Student Formation, your SASCO and COSAS. so that they can coalesce around the broader vision of the ANC in relation to transformation. So these are the cardinal challenges that we are confronted with, and we should be frank and say factionalism, corruption, and disunity are adversely affecting and slowing down the path and our historic mission of liberating this country, of having a free economic and emancipation, empowerment, and also for us as the ANC to move from entitlement to empowerment. So these are the imperatives that are imposed on us as a movement, and therefore we've got a challenge as an alliance to lead this transformation in improving the better life for all our people. So that is my parting shots, that we need a strong COSATU, we need a strong united SACP, a strong ANC, and the other structures, so that we realize our vision. It will be a pipe dream that with the current phase of disunity, factionalism, corruption, theft, that we will succeed in achieving the objectives of the National Democratic Revolution. So we are all in this. So let's work together to ensure we deliver on the mandate given by the populace. But the ANC remains the insurance, the hope of the downtrodden. So that is how I will characterize the current situation. Fairly, as a Northern Cape, we are completely united, and we are busy in terms of renewal and reconstruction. But transformation is a process and not an event. Therefore, all of us must work towards transforming society, transforming the economy, transforming our communities, that the civil servants must be revolutionary in their outlook. The police that works there must know that it is his or her responsibility to ensure that the communities are protected. The educators must also know imparting skills is part of their revolutionary task. The nurses that are treating our victims, our patients, must understand what is at stake. So all of us must take our responsibility seriously in a revolutionary manner. Lastly, how did Cuba sustain its revolution? It's because of the patriots, the understanding of its populace, and the vision of the country, where the people have internalized it and embedded it. The same like Communist China, the renewal that is going on there, the training, deploying your most capable cadres so that you can fast-track transformation. So therefore, there's a need for us to have a complete overhaul of how our public servants are providing and working, including ourselves as ANC mayors, ANC councillors, ANC ministers, ANC deputy ministers, ANC HODs, MMCs, directors, all of us, if we can just be conscious of the task at hand, ensuring that we work towards transformation. I'm confident that given the history that we come from and where we are going, we will be able to make fundamental change and improve the lives of our people. So it's a mindset, it's a revolutionary spirit and understanding. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Patrick. Comrades, I was trying to check who it was, but there was someone who sent me a private message asking if we can please repeat the questions for today. So I'm going to do that. The theme of today's talk is history that shaped today's ANC and transformation agenda. And the questions we seek to answer include: which major events in history has shaped the ANC and the transformation agenda in the province? And secondly, consequently, who is directing the discourse and outlook of heritage liberation, and why is that so? And third but not least, is such discourse and outlook an advancement of struggles for a national democratic society? If not, what is needed to ensure such a realignment is realized. I hope I didn't go too very fast there, comrades. Now, Comrade Fezeka, we're back to you now. I hope that all things technological has been resolved, whatever the limitations might be. And I've already done the introduction, comrades, explaining that Comrade Fezeka is currently MEC of Sports, Recreation, and Culture, but also spoke to her studies and her activism in the space of sports, being a runner who participated in various marathons. Comrade Fezeka, over to you, Malin.
Thank you so much once again, Comrade JP. I have already greeted, but for those who joined the dialogue later on, let me just greet the leadership of the NEC, the provincial executive committees of the 3 provinces that are embarking in the dialogue today. I am fortunate, Comrade JP, because I wanted to be the last one and get to understand what Comrade Keith and Comrade Patrick would say before me. I hope I will. Yes, I hope I will match up to the sweeping responsibility that I was given by the network challenges. Comrades, greetings to the general membership of the ANC and those who really are still hoping that the movement would take us forward. It is my singular honor to make a contribution on behalf of the province of the Eastern Cape. And of course, I am mandated by the Provincial Executive Committee. However modest my contribution would be to this debate that we present here, our opinion as the province of the Eastern Cape of the history that shaped today's ANC and transformation. Comrade Patrick and Comrade Keith have indicated, and history records that it is an undisputed fact that there's a positive relationship between the wars of dispossession of the people of the Eastern Cape in particular in the 1800s and the struggle of the ANC since 1912, which struggle culminated in the birth of the National Democratic Dispensation in the year 1994. And I thought, comrades, I would preface my debate by quoting what Amilcar Cabral said in addressing a tricontinental gathering in Cuba in 1966, when Cubans were celebrating, I think it was the 6th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. And he had this to say, and I quote, that however great the similarity between our various cases and however identical our enemies, national liberation and social revolution are not exportable commodities. They are, and increasingly so every day, the outcome of local and national elaboration, more or less influenced by external factors, be they favorable or unfavorable, but essentially determined and formed by the historical reality of each people and carried to success by the overcoming or correct solution of the internal contradictions between the various categories characterizing this reality, close quote. The above passage, comrades, and I'm prefacing the engagement with it to clearly illustrate that these dialogues and the intention of these dialogues is to indicate that even though we were facing the same enemy in the 1800s, the challenges faced by provinces and the contribution thereof of these provinces is generally not the same. It is faced and prefaced on the internal dynamics and contradictions that happened in each province. So the above passage indicates that during the formative years of the ANC, and even before the ANC was formed, at the period when the settlers arrived in the country, the province of the Eastern Cape, which is known as the home of the legends, had its own structured tactics of resistance to the colonial rule. And these strategies and tactics that we used as the province of the Eastern Cape at the time may not necessarily be similar to what happened in the Northern Cape and in the Western Cape, because the white settlers or the colonial rule, even though they were the same enemy throughout the country, they did not have the same interest in the Eastern Cape as well as in the Northern Cape or in the Western Cape. So we therefore had to make our own tailor-made strategies in order to form some form of resistance towards the colonial rule. Now, throughout the country, the enemy was one, as I have indicated, but the contribution towards transformation certainly was not the same throughout the country. We are a province that fought 9 frontier wars, and these wars lasted for 100 years, and they were fought by the people of this province in the 19th century. And these people, the people of the Eastern Cape at the time, were led by traditional leaders, and they fought these wars to protect the resources of their people. Every record of these frontier wars would mention leaders such as Hintsa, Sahili, Maqoma, Makanda, Kungubele, and many others in the name as leaders of regiments. And what took my interest when I was doing this write-up is how out of the 9 frontier wars, Maqoma led and won 7 of those frontier wars. So it's an indication that we had the most strongest regiments in the province of the Eastern Cape that waged a very beautiful fight against the settlers at the time. In other words, the agenda of these traditional leaders was solely that of social and economic empowerment of their people. Because if you remember, comrades, when the settlers arrived, they found us settled in our own land, doing our business, having not been poor, carrying on with our lives in a communal way. And they then upset the entire system. So we needed to protect our economic and social empowerment of the people in general. It is a recorded fact that the colonists were a strong enemy that aimed directly for usurpation of the natural resources and cattle on which the people of the Eastern Cape depended for their livelihoods. Now, Dr. A.P. Kuma in 1941, when he addressed a Congress, he said, and I quote, "The fundamental basis of all wealth and power is the ownership and acquisition of freehold title to land. From land, we derive our existence. We derive our wealth in minerals, food, and other essentials. On land, we build our homes. Without land, we cannot exist," close quote. And I would argue that this was the basis why these regiments fought so hard for the resistance. And this is why the Eastern Cape features prominently in the transformation and in the build-up towards the formation of the ANC in 1912. The ANC public secretary Thabo Mbeki coined it nicely when he said in 1982, which was the last decade of apartheid, he said, and I quote, "South Africa was conquered by force and is now ruled by force. The enemy used the barrel of the gun. When the gun was not in use, legal administration, religion, and even education were utilized." Given an example of how, close quote, and this is indicated, particularly in this province, by how during that time of colonization and towards the intensification of the fight against the apartheid rule, how we were given a new culture. And I'm going to quickly get into the religion now, and how we got to have towns that are called Grahamstown, how we got to be having towns that are called East London and Berlin, and so on and so forth. Now, what we had our own culture, we had our own type of religion. There were kraals wherein our people would go and practice religious activities. And when the settlers came in those kraals, they erected churches. You had in Makhanda a Wesley missionary where the Wesley Guild started. In Queenstown, you had what happened in the Bulhoek massacre, wherein our people were massacred because they gathered to go and have a Passover there, and they were led by religious leaders who at that period, and I think that period was called the Tula moment, around the 1910, just towards the formation of the then South African Native Congress, which later became the ANC in 1912. So you then see that we had our own form of resisting, even though we were given a foreign culture and a foreign language in English. So the colonizers inscripted even their names, eroding our rich heritage and our rich history so that we can become new people. These colonizers killed Insa for his cattle. They defeated Sahili, his son and successor, for his land. The incarceration of Maqoma, Makhanda, Kungubele, and other leaders who had been led by so-called Trim of Nongause and were ordered to kill their cattle may be described as the precursor of what the leaders of our own struggle experienced. And I am coming towards what then the Eastern Cape would then contribute glaringly towards the formation of the ANC. The violent process of land dispossession in the Eastern Cape and the Cape Colony broadly has been succinctly summed up by Professor Wilson in the Oxford History Volume 1, titled During the 100 Years, the Boundary Shifted Eastward. In 1772, some Xhosas mingled with Khoikhoi were living on the Kamtos. In 1806, the boundary was then Fish River. In 1811, Kumhlaba kaNhlambe, with 20,000 followers, they were pushed across the Fish River. All I needed $1. In 1819, you see the shift moving towards Fish River in Kiskamahook, and by around 1824, the whites really occupied the area of Fish River towards Kiskamahook, and we see them establishing churches in St. Matthew's, Kwabo Kiskamahook, wherein they recruited the likes of Tatu James Cannon Talata, and we see them moving towards Amtata, Ngabo 1878 and 1894 towards Pondoland, wherein they were confronted by the Pondo revolt, and that's another interesting topic that we may at some point get to. And I think I must just focus on what Professor Andre Odendaal in his book, The Founders, argue. He argues, and I quote, that the shaping of South Africa and many other countries amid the clamor of Christianity, civilization, and progress was in fact accompanied step by step by systemic violence over a long period. And certainly the Eastern Cape was one of the regions where interactions between the settlers and the indigenous people really happened. And as I have indicated, our province is the most fortified province, which is an indication that we were the ones that fought the most battles. For the first 40 years in the Eastern Cape, the missionaries struggled to make headways, and they then turned the missionary project into killing of the cattle strategy. As a result, authority of the chiefs and traditional beliefs reduced and impoverished a whole number of people, because abantu abaninzi were to be, they were indoctrinated to think that their only hope will come from the religion. Around the 1870s, the first generation of activists emerged from the Eastern Cape. You then saw a large contingent of graduates and high school learners coming up from centers like Lovedale, Hilltown, St. Matthews, and these graduates that were produced in this province, some of them went on to lead in other African countries, the likes of Otatu Roberto Mugabe, who were educated in the province. So those are the indications that as a province, we made a contribution towards not only transformation of South Africa, but transformation of the African continent in general. Now, the last question that I want to touch on is, how do we view as the province, how is the Eastern Cape, how is the ANC today with regard to the perspective of the Eastern Cape? We see that after the defeat of the apartheid regime in 1994, a large contingent of those, and I don't want to, because comrades here understand and know who led the ANC, the presidents of the ANC, the secretary generals of the ANC, and how many of them came from the Eastern Cape, how many of those leaders that made a contribution in the leadership of the Communist Party, in the leadership of the ANC Youth League at that time and currently. Now today, our responsibility as the province of the Eastern Cape is to continue to take our people back to their history, back to their identity by renaming these institutions and these towns and these mountains that were given foreign names. And the current debate that is going on is whether should we demolish the statues that are erected in all these towns in the province of the Eastern Cape and start to tell a story that indicates what I have just narrated in the beginning, the contribution of the people of the Eastern Cape in the establishment of the ANC, as well as the transformation of this country. Undoubtedly, as the province of the Eastern Cape, we have produced prominent leaders. Amongst them, I can mention O.R. Tambo, who served as the glue that kept the ANC together in the most difficult years. Tatu Nelson Mandela, Abo Tatu Chris Hani, Abo Mamu Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Abo Tatu Lutuli, Abo Mamu Charlotte Maxeke, who was very instrumental in the establishment of Bantu Women Association that later became the ANC Women's League. Abo Tatu Vislemina, Abo Tatu Raymond Mhlaba, who made significant strides in establishing and leading the South African Communist Party, and Thabo Mbeki, who had a very strong imprint in the leadership of the ANC. One of the defining characteristics of the ANC is that it has always had a reasonable ability to be honest when assessing its problems. And in all the conferences and the documents that have been produced in the ANC and the NGCs, we have been accurate and transparent about the issues that are engulfing the ANC, the issues like corruption, the issues like factionalism and internal divisions in the ANC. And I think that's the strength of the ANC. We have been honest for quite some time and are admitting our wrongs. But comrades would agree with me that being honest and admitting our wrongs is one thing. The begging question is, what are we doing to fix these challenges we have today? Bishop Mbete once said, "Siphetwe incilikiti." And then I think it is because we had the longest living liberation movement in the continent. And we are now dizzy. And in the process of being dizzy, we are knocking ourselves in each and every corner. We are so self-absorbed. We pull every card. Like, for instance, if I am not in the leadership of the ANC, I am not leading in any structure, I look at myself and start comparing myself with the comrades, women comrades that are leading in the ANC, and say women are not represented in the ANC or in the structures of the ANC, solely because I am not there as a person. So that is the nature of the ANC and the character of the leadership we have in the ANC currently. And I am really hoping, comrades, that as we are knocking ourselves with our head all over the corners, we will wake up and realize that we are denting the movement, we are killing the ANC. Lastly, comrade, and I think this is what the ANC in the Eastern Cape needs to do moving forward, because one of the questions is, what is it that we need to do moving forward? I don't think changing the names back to Intabozuko or changing the names of the East London Airport to King Palo Airport would necessarily make a huge dent. For me, what would make a huge dent is what was said by Dr. A.B. Kuma, and I am closing. What was said by Dr. A.B. Kuma in the same Congress he was addressing in 1941, and I quote, he said, "To Congress, we must be loyal and true. For Congress, we must forget any personal or sectional interest or gain. We must put the cause and the interest of the people before any expediency. To be true leaders, we must put the interest and the welfare of our people above our own. And close quote. This is what Comrade A. said in 1941, and it can never be. So it is so relevant even today, Comrade JP, that we need to put the interest of the people first and stop comparing provinces that the Eastern Cape is better, is corrupt, but it is better than the KZN or the Western Cape. So in my view, our responsibility as the leadership and the membership of the ANC is putting the interest of the people above. Otherwise, if we don't do that, trust me, we are going to lose the power we have. Thank you so much. Amandla.
Away too.
Away too. Away too.
Away too.
I know, fire there. Comrade says we're dizzy, comrades. I'm not going to say anything to that and leave it to yourselves to elaborate more on it. But I really think really very pointed views there. Thank you very much, Comrade Fezek. I really thank you very much. We will take hands, leaders. We will try to take as many hands as is possible. We can't go past the 2 o'clock mark, so please try, before you post your question, to at least apply yourself about what you want to ask. If in your posing of question or comment, you are beginning to go towards over 1 minute, you will now be putting me in an uncomfortable situation of having to say, leader, I'm going to have to mute you if you don't summarize. So I will take some hands, but let me see just in the chat groups here, some views expressed here, that some of them I thought were quite interesting, really. Comrade Buyelwa, referring to Comrade Kit's input, saying very informative, and also saying amongst the issues Comrade Kit is raising, even though he's not mentioning it specifically, is the decline of discipline amongst us to do the most important thing, which is to attend ANC branch meetings. The big question to be answered within that context is the ANC's post-liberation agenda still relevant, especially to today's cadres? This comes from Comrade Buyela Sonjika from Gabishiro branch. So I hope that our presenters took note of this. Question, is the ANC's post-liberation agenda still relevant to today's, sorry, let me read the question again. Is the ANC's post-liberation agenda still relevant, especially to today's cadre? Now, Mandla Madwara, comrade touches on a fairly sensitive subject in the movement, I think. Says that I think that we need to chart a path of integrating provinces both politically and with economic growth, infrastructure, and manufacturing projects. Limpopo Platinum Belt, I'm going to give a firm example here how this could be done. Limpopo Platinum Belt connection with catalytic converter industries based in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape for export, Northern Cape manganese and iron ore mines and export through Eastern Cape ports. It seems there is much parallelism with our provinces with no deliberate integration for transformation of our economy and transformation. Welcome, Mandla says he also raises hand about this, so that's noted. Absalom, Absalom Prof says that our time of school is our only weapon to use for all leaders, nationally, provincially, locally. They should also include our civil servants to do in a compulsory manner. Indeed, leader, what we're encouraging is that one must do the OR Tambo School courses. If you go online, www.ortamboschool.org.za, you go to register for a course, you are able there to do the prerequisite course, which is free and online. So we really encourage commerce to do that. And the discussion indeed within the ANC is around making this compulsory for one to be able to serve in leadership. Comrade Stanley Obakeng, Sidiko, Oratambo School has lots of technological loopholes. I believe going back to the basics for the CERS, political education will be key. Okay, Comrade Stanley, I hope you are not suggesting we need political education on using technology. But you know, your point is taken. One is very open to suggestion. I think also the attitude of the school really is really one of, if there are suggestions of areas of improvement, please don't feel shy to communicate with the numbers and even the emails that gets provided. I think specifically in terms of UMRABULO dialogues, really the appeal also, comrades, try to be already in the waiting rooms, so 5-10 minutes before the time. If you come 30 minutes before the time, you probably wait longer. And also if your name and surname is not reflected on the phone, we will not be able to admit you. Comrades Kayelitle, I really like the point that traditional leaders were defending the resources to enhance social and economic state of the people. What's your take on the current state of traditional leaders and chiefs being involved in corruption allegations? What role can ANC play to remind traditional leaders about such important aspect their forefathers played in the struggle? Okay, comrades, let me take a hand or two that I've observed. Let's go to Comrade Batando Memele. Comrade Batando? Comrade Batando, need to unmute.
Audible, comrades.
Now you are.
Thank you. Comrade JP, I think as a disclaimer, maybe I should ask for 2 minutes instead of 1 minute, as last week my hand remained raised. However, because of time constraints, I was unable.
Just 30 seconds motivate.
Thanks. That's my motivation. Yes. Firstly, thanks to the panelists. I think the reflection was succinctly captured on all three provinces, particular. I just want to zoom to the Western Cape, my province that I'm currently residing in. It's good seeing you, Comrade Keith. I haven't seen you since my varsity days at UWC. Thank you for such a reflection. The first thing, Comrade Keith has mentioned a lot, and I think I'm going to be frank on this one, in that we sit with an eminent problem in the province of the Western Cape, in that, number one, there is an issue where certain communities don't want to be identified as being Black and ultimately being part of the motive forces or the primary motive forces of a national democratic revolution. Mostly so in the colored community. Now, my comment or question, as Comrade Keith has stated, that the ANC, particularly in the Western Cape, needs to place itself strategically. Now, my question or comment to Comrade Keith, how do branches or the Western Cape ANC, and particularly the biggest region, which is the Tula Oma region, strategically places itself to win these individuals that do not particularly want to be identified as a primary motive force of the National Democratic Revolution? I think Comrade Paul Botto and Comrade Isham Malaji and even Comrade Faze would agree on this one. Chair, over to you.
Yeah, Comrade Batani, actually didn't even take 2 minutes, by the way, but thank you very much. I was very willing to give it to you, my leader.
Thank you, Comrade.
Comrade Batana, let me lower your hand. And then the usual suspect, if I can call you that, Lemako. My leader. Comrade Lemako.
Thanks to the process which are
in the wind or something there. You need to stop moving and try.
I will go to Western Cape. I just want to check Comrade Cape there. So it come out going to
I'm not the only one
that we were the party in there, and something just happened. Time that we lost power, it seems that we just retained power. And you made very important about the proper benches in that province, whereby we have to make sure that we do it the right way to reclaim power there. So our last question will be, there were political skill transfer, if I call it the way that with the names that you hold, Cheryl Karas, Trevor Manuel, Rasul, those comrades, or comrades have the problem that we have only leaders who get transfer the skills to the ones that take the burden faults or what's the problem, what can be done to that problem again. And from that thing that we don't need power to political parties in our provinces, stay from the GDP.
So, Comrade Lemako, just to be safe, I'd ask if you can please just retype your question in the chat group, because I really didn't hear anything. I think you are walking and there is wind around you there, so it was a bit unclear. Unless if the speakers ask, and I think you direct your question specifically at Comrade Keith. Kungela Hobongwana. The floor is yours, Lynn.
Okay, yes, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much, man. I'll get straight to it. I have 2 points I just want to make. One is triggered by Comrade Patrick. I think he's concerned about the fact that we have policies that we struggle to understand as comrades, because I think the plenary sessions that are catered to deal with these policy documents are not enough, or they are conducted under a short space of time. It's as if we are dealing with an emergency. But here we want to be dealing with policy documents that will cater for the next, say, 20 years. And I want to believe in theory we understand the NDP policy, but what is more practical is the RDP. ANC is even referring back to the RDP because it's practical. We have seen how it works. And I'll give congratulations to the comrade who actually worked on the RDP. But now it is time to work on new policies, because we are late on National Development Plan and we haven't practically understand how it's supposed to work. And we know these policies contain issues of education, for example, technology integration, ICT integration. There are issues of educational decoloniality that needs to be practically discussed. So I just wanted on that part to say we need to open up time to have these plenary sessions so that we can discuss properly. When the time comes that you will need to consolidate that document, at least it has been discussed, and the practicality and the science even behind each and every element has been properly discussed. So that was my point. On Fezek, I just wanted to check, she spoke very well, but I want her to note this. For example, I come from a small township that was established in 1942. It is Zwelitsha. When I was growing up, that was about 25 years ago, we had 2 garages in that township. So it was quite a well-developed township when I was growing up. But today, we don't even have a shop in that township. We had sport, we had everything. So at the time where people migrated from farms, rural areas to establish Zwelitsha, because its focus was Dagama factory. So when it was established, people were more paying attention in terms of its development, its tradition. However, as I'm talking today, I think we have about 6 schools that are closed, and in which I want to propose that such schools needs to be used as historical sites, where we even talk about mere people who establish soccer teams, to say so-and-so establish a soccer team, so-and-so, this is his contribution in this township, so that such a history can be easily inherited. So I'm just using Zwelitsha as an example. Otherwise, in our all township, that is what we need. And also, what effect, therefore, does the history of Yinsa has in that township? Rather than just talking about the history of Yinsa and that's it. But let's see how in practicality it has the transformation took into account of that history in terms of this urban development and this industrial development that took place, and how are we sustaining such areas today. Bisho, for example, Zwelitsha is a township that's like 5 kilometers away from Bisho. Bisho is going down, and Bisho is our capital. So what history are we putting down with regards to Bisho and its citizens multidisciplinary participation in that area. So basically, I wanted her to look at that because it is a history that needs to be dotted down. Just from mere people, ordinary people who were part of street committees, they need to be put down because those people are the same people who established the church. They built those churches by their own hands. All the churches you'll find in our township. So we need those names up, not necessarily comrades, so that we can learn how to build from what they have started. Okay, thank you so much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Malina. Comrade Lutando? Comrade Lutando?
Thanks, Comrade JP, and thanks to the comrades who presented on behalf of the three provinces. I just want to make a brief comment, Comrade JP, especially in light of the fact that the history, there's intersection, between the past, present, and the future. And I think the questions that the school has put together to encourage all of us to respond to are informed by that. So we can't create a Chinese wall, between the past, present, and the future as the three intersect or connect. So I think perhaps comrades can comment on how do we then, in that context of that continuum, how do we then use that to inspire young people? I think in the last discussion, when we were dealing with the three provinces last week, at this point was partly raised. So how do we then encourage intergenerational dialogue, so as to really inspire young people to understand where we're coming from and where we are, so that they can then be able to imagine where we want to go. Because without that, given where we are in the fourth industrial revolution and all of that, what is missing is the value system. And if you look at the combination of the three presentations, they talk to the values that drove the founders, of the liberation movement. And you'll find that those values we no longer adhered to, and we no longer pass those values, to the younger generation. And you will also find that that value system is not embedded in our education system as well, especially given the fact that, as we all know, that education is about really re-establishment of the value system of a society. And if we miss at that level of transferring good values, appropriate values, a good value system as the foundation for this nation, then we'll have this thing that is happening now of a reorientation or orientation of the current generation of young people to the values of capital, if you like, as opposed to a proper orientation to the values of patriotism and all of that. Thanks, Comrade JP. So, comrades, I would love to hear their thoughts, in relation to that, as to what is it that we can do practically, to deal with this aspect of transferring values, particularly to young people.
Okay, now to our speakers, in an effort to try and have a second bite at comments and questions, leaders, I'm going to ask you just to respond to some of the comments being made. If you could please briefly try to keep it under 5 minutes so we can take another quick round of questions and comments towards the closure. Comrade Patrick, let me start with you. Any comments to the questions or comments made so far by comrades? Comrade Patrick? Comrade Patrick? I keep thinking the Northern Cape is very far from where I am, so I hope the message is not still in the airwaves, try to find its way over there. Comrade Patrick, okay. Let's, Comrade Keith, let me then start with you. Do you have any comments to the comments made thus far?
Thanks, comrades, for all those interesting and useful points. There were more comments than questions to me, but I think there's a lot of consensus among us. The ANC needs to be relevant to us. Clearly, creating more jobs is a very, very urgent matter in the Western Cape. I mentioned the need to think strategically over affirmative action. And for all of us, it's to revive our branches, that they must hold meetings, that they must get a quorum. Thanks, comrade.
Thank you very much, Comrade Keith. Comrade Fezega?
Thank you very much, Comrade JP. And I agree with Comrade Keith that a lot of the comments that were made by comrades would really enhance our discussion documents going forward. And because we were just whetting the appetite of the comrades so that these debates can continuously go on in their circles, in their branches, I believe those comments are most welcome. But I think I need to just touch on two things. The first question that I took an interest in, it was not asked to me, but I took an interest in one of the comrades asked whether the National Democratic Revolution is still relevant even today. And my answer would be yes, because what the National Democratic Revolution stood for at that time is still relevant. But I think tying that question up with what was raised by Comrade Lutando Jack with respect to the crop of the membership that we have, the membership that is not schooled on the values of the ANC, the character of the ANC, but rather I hope this part of being honest as members of the ANC, we need to admit to these things. Rather what we have, the current crop of leadership is membership of people, a membership that is bought, a membership that is shall I say, schooled in understanding what is in it for me instead of what is in for the people of the country at large. So I think these kinds of engagements and dialogues and the school, the OR Tambo School of Leadership, is going to help us in inculcating not only a leadership but a cadreship that really understands what the ANC stands for, and that is not going to put its interest at the forefront instead of serving the organization. And those are just a few comments that I wanted to make. Thanks.
JP, I'm available.
Yeah, there's a hand up here from Bantwi.
JP, can I go ahead?
Oh, you're back. Okay, yes, Comrade Patrick, please.
No, thanks very much, Comrade JP. I think the point raised by Vuela Sonjika, our former Minister of Water, I think is quite relevant in having an integrated economic paradigm. And also that it is very important that as provinces, we try by all means to attract foreign direct investment, domestic investment, and free trade agreement in Africa. How do you fast track that? And also how do we unlock the domestic strike by local businesses that are not investing in the local economy? So there's a point for us to have an integrated approach, especially in terms of beneficiations of our minerals, the manganese, the iron ore, etc. We are endowed with that natural asset, so we've got to integrate. But the province, our posture is to beneficiate. I like the idea of the values that should be inculcated amongst our cadres. I think it is quite true that we need to stick to the resolutions that we have taken as a movement in our various conferences. There are clear resolutions to say one of the cardinal points that should permeate any conference or leadership is through the eye of the needle. Seldom do we talk about that document because it summarizes the kind of cadre that we have. But for convenience sake, it is thrown out of the windows when we have got to deal with it. So the question of honesty, the question of integrity, selflessness, are the values that we should try by all means to agree to them and ensure that they become our daily practices as a movement. With regard to the traditional leaders, they've got a positive role to play in society, and therefore they should be given a space to operate on, also to be given the necessary support that we have. With regard to the question of those who are implicated in some malfeasance, I would not want to get into that with due respect. And lastly, I think in terms of the RDP, one was not nostalgic about it per se, but it was to indicate that as a movement, we always rise to the occasion to respond to the challenges. So the question of implementation is quite key in relation to moving forward, so that at a national level, we avoid these divisions, this factionalism and other ANC activities, so that we focus on the task at hand and be united. That's how I will respond to the challenges confronting us. But we are quite confident that with the 4IR, we can roll it out and produce the next leaders, because we can't be beaten by Rwanda. Rwanda beat the entire West by coming with a G5. And so we can have that as well as South Africa. We've got the talent. So the question of values in education is key, and also taking the industry forward, the fourth industrial revolution. But one thing lastly, JP, that I think we are missing is the whole notion of industrialization in all the provinces. Because we all know how we have industrialized. As a result, we are importing steel from China, whereas we've got steel, manganese, and everything. So the whole question of beneficiation and industrialization is what I will recommend to all our provinces and the country as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Comrade Bantwini, please come in.
Thanks, Chair. Bantwini, Nelson Mandela, Ward 5, Chairperson Branch of the ANC at Molly Black Band Cluster. Chair, firstly, man, let me appreciate and welcome thought-provoking presentations, very rich in heritage generally and our culture, where we come from as different provinces, which were all united by the ANC. Chair, the past, the present, and then for me, the present and the future becomes key. Remember the role that was played by sport in the fight against apartheid. We need to also lift that up in our documents as a movement to ensure if we lift that in terms of documents, we'll be able to see the need to invest in our sports culture, arts going forward, because I feel that the ANC-led government is playing marbles when it comes to arts, culture, and sports. If you look at developed countries in the world, what they put in terms of resources to grow that area, really we'll see we were playing marbles. I know people will talk about competing demands and all that, but all demands must share equitably in the limited resources that we have as a country. So arts should not be by the way, and sport should not be by the way. It should be key as terms of transformation in this country. Remember, social cohesion has got strategic pillars there that you need to throw your resources in. So for me, I think I must emphasize, I'm very, very disappointed with the allocation of resources by ANC-led government in these areas. Two, Chair, if we want to also talk about heritage and history, my cadre, I'll be biased to the Eastern Cape presenter, Comrade Fezek. She did a sterling work when it comes to that. She also mentioned the key colonial schools, colonial institutions played in terms of educating our people generally, and African in particular. That is a heritage that needs also to be magnified. That means the resources have got to be thrown. Remember, the flag bearers of high institution fighters, Chair. You remember it's your Western Cape, you remember it's Forte, you remember it's Teflo. They stood against the bastions of apartheid, Stellenbosch. You can count them, all those universities. But if you look, compare them in terms of resources, capacity in terms of research, it's really unacceptable. The ANC-led government must have a deliberate resource allocation and targeted to these flag bearers. When it was dark in this country, intelligentsia from this university confronted the racist and very evil system of apartheid. Today, we have our leaders, have our deployees, have our comrades who can't really just put the foot down and focus. Where do we come from? Where do we take this forward? Because we can't always reminiscent about our past and yet our future. We're not having catalytic projects, as Budmandla Matwaka will always say. And he has just said so here in the church. We need to be focused, we need to be rigorous, we need to be aggressive and unapologetic. This is really, really unacceptable. Now, Forte, Western Cape Bush, what is developed today, Chair? What is developed today? Yeah, but what we need here, we need a clear resource allocation biased, so that when we must have future, we've got our history as black people. The MEC, Comrade Fezek, put it very well here. We've got it, it's there. Now let's build the future. Let's build a non-racial future. Let's bring forward in the mainstream the African and black generally a future, which is there that needs resourcing. Lastly, Chair, we are not going to smile with our leaders. When we're fighting in battles generally, and when we fight in rugby in particular, as you can see, I'm wearing a jersey, a rugby team called Young Collegians, very revolutionary club in Port Elizabeth. Chair, we are not going to smile with our leaders when we talk to them and tell them and give them information that we need their support, because they meet with these presidents of these federations. They have coffee with these people. They sit wherever they sit. But when we give them information to tell them, we are struggling here. The matter now in the Eastern Cape, the home of black rugby, we are Cinderella in South African rugby. And yet our leaders, whether it's a minister, whether it's an MEC, whether it's a member of parliament, portfolio committee, they must stop smiling with these people when we're fighting. They must tell them, Eastern Cape is here to stay. Eastern Cape rugby must be in that and get that franchise. That franchise must be here, it must be resourced, and it must be guaranteed for 15 years. Then we can work here. But we'll always be Cinderella. Our players going to Free State, going to Western Province, going to any other province, but except growing talent here, building our children close to their parents, close to their culture, understanding their environment, but now they are treated as mercenaries. So, Chair, in closing, please, we've got to be serious. We've got to be serious as ANC-led government now. We've got no time now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comrade Ernest Theron, be followed by Comrade Zola Lenza.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I'm from the Western Cape, from a branch called Jane Davis branch. Jane Davis branch is Ward 43, which is part of the Daloma region. Just to react to the question that was raised around the people that don't want to be called black. I think that's a generalization, but I'm not going to elaborate on it. I think in our case, what we are doing is that for all intents and purposes, it seems like we have surrendered the narrative on how things are interpreted in the Western Cape to the reactionary forces. So the question is, how do we take that back if we don't actually engage? Point in case, if we listen to, let's take when our president addressed us on TV, or generally the ANC, when we talk about, we make the term black, we as ANC understand when we use the term black. But what we do is when the reactionary forces take that very same statement and then they turn it on us, because we're not explaining what it means. If you take in terms of the BE employment equity. We must explain in context when we raise those things what it means, because an auntie sitting in a Belha or in an ambitious plane in front of TV, their way of interpreting black as what's being told to them by the react or drummed into them by the reaction reporters. So we need to roll that back. We need to claim back the narrative space, which we are not doing. If we take it a step further, the ANC is a business, or if we're marketing, if a business markets a product, what does it do? It has a marketing plan and a strategic objective, what it wants to achieve and invest in that area that it wants to do. The issue about having 100 members, BECs, it becomes that we talk to ourselves because we are not outward looking. We always look inwards and we debate amongst ourselves. So the question we need to ask is, why do we want to change that people identify as black? What is it what we do and how are we going to do it? Once we have the why, I'm sure we'll then be able to get the what and the how. The other part of it is that we operate in silos as the alliance. So everybody does something and then others all react to that and we work in a different direction, possibly doing the same things. So what we do, if we allow the narrative by the reactionary forces, in terms of what we're doing, we're exposing what you'll call in war your flank. In other words, we're exposing our base areas for infiltration because we can't put the enemy on the defensive in their own areas because we are working past one another as the alliance or as the ANC. We're not focusing on what it is that we want out of it. Doesn't help us to have 100 members because that's easy to do. But to be able to use the 100 members and your BECs effectively and be outward looking and programs and respect of just talking. That's, I think, is the only way we're going to address the question about people that don't want to be known as black, which, as I state, is a generalization. I think that we need to focus on what it is that we as the ANC want. And once we know that, we will know what to do. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Comrade Zola. Use your camera if you can.
Thank you, Comrade JP. Let me welcome the presentations also, Zola Mlenzana. I have noticed today that comrades are introducing themselves through branches. I'm also the chairperson of the continual branch in the Eastern Cape. I'm not floating, Comrade JP. Just three issues. The first one is that, by the way, I had thought that Comrade Bantwini would come to it as he lands. The demarcation of sport federations in terms of government demarcation. I think this also, Comrade last born, should be considered if we have to realize what Comrade Bantwini was raising. The second one would be listening to Comrade Nkomonye's input, particularly when she was narrating our history of resistance. It brought to me a thought, Comrade JP, which says, how if then we have a deliberate and structural relations with the faith-based structures? My feeling is that these should be considered part of our motive force in the NDR, so that it's not just a by the way, particularly when it comes to your education, Comrade Lastborn. We link this faith-based education in grooming up our young, particularly in schools. You have got school sport, you have got all that. If we now inculcate your faith now there, so that as a way of trying also to mold this going towards the South Africa we want. Then the last one, Chair, trying to be quick, would be also on this history of resistance. If it couldn't be just a by the way, if it could be considered, Comrade JP, as a tool for our economic recovery, how then can that be? How then that we can turn your sport, arts and culture in one way or the other to feature, particularly your tourism part of it, in your rural part of the Eastern Cape and all. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you. There's Comrade Mandla Matwaha, who says his hand is up, though I can't see it. The hand I can see Lindelwa. The hand is up, but nonetheless, I will note you, Comrade Mandla, because you raised your hand in the chat box. Can we start with you? Okay, there you are.
Can I come in, Comrade?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Comrade Brian. Thanks, Comrade JP, and to the presenters. Mine will be very short. Firstly, I think our challenge as a movement, especially in government, that we are trapped in our provinces. And as such, there's this parallelism in terms of transformation, the economic agenda. And thanks to the school, we're now basically deliberate and politically integrating, the interaction politically, as in looking in history and culture, and of course, transformation into the future. Hence, in my comment, I said, look, we've got in the Eastern Cape 3 ports, Port Elizabeth, Port of Ngqura, and East London. Inland, we've got Northern Cape, rich in minerals, iron ore, manganese, ferromanganese, and so on. And then we've got the Limpopo platinum belt. But we don't seem, to actually integrate deliberately, what these provinces have. And I think, to me, we need therefore to debate this matter and how to integrate. For example, when we talk of heritage and culture, even in last week's debate, Comrade JP, we were mentioning heritage of everything else except the minerals. Why are we say apparently these commodities belong to somewhere else and not our heritage? And even today, the input even of Comrade Patrick hardly mentioned the issue of these minerals being part of our heritage, and therefore we need transformation, So I would like to promote that thinking. Lastly, going into the character of the organization, I think, comrades, we need to go back, especially in our NGC, and review this issue of membership. Rather better, but few. So that we can then have a situation where we vet new membership, probation period, look at the characters of the people that are applying. And some of them, if we're not happy, we reject them. Through the probation, if some of them are not actually complying with what the ANC stands for, you reject them. Because after all, the people that are voting is our society. What is important is the interaction between the ANC, its membership, its branches, with the streets, with the wards, and with the society in general. That's where the connection is important. Because at the moment, as I've always say, we live in the South Africa of ANC parallel to the Republic of South Africa. That is why we've got a crisis between our constitution of the ANC and that of the Republic. That's why sometimes when certain judgments are made in court, when we're not happy, we insulted the judges. So for me, I would rather say better but few, comrades, so that we can minimize some of the problem, because some of the characters that are actually compromising the organization and the society, we know them. We're not surprised by their conduct, but why do we allow them the membership? I mean, if the ANC has got only membership of 2 million and is quality membership, what is important is the broader society. How we deliver, how we are accountable to them, because to claim to be the leader of the society, but we live in our own world, is exactly why 10 million people in 2019 did not vote. Otherwise, thanks, Comrade JP, and really, we are enjoying this UMRABULO. It's making all the difference, and probably it's the positive side of COVID-19. Otherwise, we would have this UMRABULO only in our respective provinces. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Comrade Lindelwa.
Thank you, Comrade JP. Good afternoon to everybody, and the presenter and the presentations that were thought-provoking. My granddaughter said to her parents, nobody in this house is going to vote DA. And when parents then were saying, and then where does that come from? She then said, our teacher at school, and they're in a private school in Cape Town, our teacher at school said we must tell our parents that the only party that is to be voted for in this country is DA. I'm starting there because I want to make a proposal. Don't want to waste time. If we say we love Cuba, Cuba is we know the history where we're coming from with Cuba, can't we then practice as we do all the other things? And maybe the school mandate provinces and branches that we must do what the Cubans are doing. They have got what is called a pioneer, where children from the age of 5, JP, are taught, should I say, are indoctrinated about the history. That is why Cuba is surviving.
Inculcated is a better word, Comrade Lindelwa, inculcated.
Inculcated, yes. That's why Cuba has survived that blockade. Comrade, I think that's what we are to do. That's the proposal. Second, it's a question to everybody. I like what Comrade Babini said. I'm from Nelson Mandela, Ward 25. My chairperson is Gobani. My secretary is Mabaso. I'm a member of the African National Congress in good standing, and that of the Communist Party. Can I be told and be corrected? Maybe and be called to order. I find it very strange why, as the society, we have been quiet when the young people in sport, in cricket in particular, when they elevated the issue of racism, we were quiet. Because that, for me, was an opening. Because racism is just across everywhere. But we had young people who were bold enough. Why? Maybe I missed that debate. As activists, as members of the African National Congress-led alliance, and as communities that have been ravaged, which are still ravaged by racism. That's my proposal and the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comrades, as we approach the end, before I hand back to the presentations for their closure, I think we have to read the following on the Zoom group chat. This was penned by Anusha Pillay, and this is what she had to say. As much as we criticize the opposition parties like the DA, Freedom Front Plus, for their race-based policies and the growing racism, not just in our society, but globally as well. As the ANC, we have also moved away from the national question discourse. I have experienced and am witness to our own intolerance of race. And as an Indian female, it is becoming increasingly clear that my organization has also let me down in the inconsistencies in its own application of our non-racist stance. Close quote. That was from Comrade Anusha. At this point, comrades, given the time, we are going to ask our panelists, Comrades Fezeka, Keith, and Patrick Mabilo, to have their closing remarks. And then Comrade JPB on standby after that. Who would want to go first? Comrade Fezeka?
The first shall be the last.
Okay.
And the last shall be the first. Thank you so much, Comrade Brian. I think I just want to welcome once again the comments made by the comrades. There They truly are enriching our discussion. And like I said earlier on, it would not be just to give a history of the contribution of the province of the Eastern Cape into the transformation of the Republic of South Africa in just 20 minutes. So this was just to whet the appetite. That is why we have been saying that we welcome the comments that were made by the comrades. And certainly in 20 minutes, one cannot cover all the aspects of why we are today called the home of the legends, because not only to the traditional leaders, not only to the political leaders across the political party spectrum, because we do not only make a contribution with respect to the ANC leaders. There are a number of other leaders from other political parties who are hailing from this province. What we have done in terms of sport, what we have done, the contribution we have made in terms of even music towards the transformation of this country. So certainly one would not have covered everything, but we really tried. I want to agree with Comrade Sanusha, Comrade Pillay, in that the reality is, as the ANC, I don't think we have really engaged fully on and found solutions on the issues that relate to the national question, the issues of race. We tend to shy away from that discussion and label other political parties as though they are racist. But internally, I believe we have some elements of not paying attention to the issues of the national question. And I must add, one of the things that I feel strongly as a young woman is that not only are we not paying attention to the character of the ANC being a non-racial, but we're not paying attention to the character of the ANC being a non-sexist organization. In most of the time, we are electing leaders that are male to dominate the structures. We are giving responsibilities only to male. If we are giving a responsibility to a female, male comrades must then make sure that there is something that they do so that these female comrades can fight each other and then they emerge. And those female comrades who are given responsibility, I would want to urge them to give their all, even if they are mayors, they are premiers, give your all, because our strength relies on the responsibility that is given to you at that time so that you can open the doors for others. So in a nutshell, comrades, I think this is a very interesting discussion, and I would certainly listen to the next week's debate.
Thank you very much. Comrade Patrick?
No, thanks very much, Chair. I think I was triggered by Bantwini around the sports issue. We must not forget one of the strongest affiliates of the UDF by then was the National Sports Congress, which articulated a vision for a non-racial sport and SACCOs, etc. So there's a need for us to rebuild on some of those good practices by the United Democratic Front as far as sports is concerned, because sports can contribute towards social cohesion and nation building. So I agree fully with you around that. I think I've seen the former provincial secretary of the Western Cape ANC, Comrade Faisal. I think we can share best practices with the Western Cape, Comrade Ernest, because the situations are quite similar. And I think as a province, we've sustained our majority since 1994, up to last year, 2019. So there are good things that we are doing as the ANC. Comrade Zola, quickly in relation to your school sport and etc., I think you are spot on. Lastly, Comrade Lindela and the Comrade previously, I think there are two issues that I must take here. The minerals, I agree, it's an omission on our part that the minerals are not part of our heritage. But currently, the minerals are in the hands of the private sector. That's why, as a province, under the leadership of Premier and Chairperson Zamane Sol, we have taken a resolution that as a province, Northern Cape will establish a state-owned mining company. So that's how I will respond to that. But I think, lastly, Chair, my final concluding remarks will be that the resolutions that were taken at the PE 2000 NGC resolutions are still relevant, including the national question. So if we can revisit that and ensure that we actualize and practicalize the 2000 NGC resolution around the national question. There's no doubt that we've got to pursue as the ANC our historic mission to ensure that we deliver and improve the quality of our masses. Yes, we have achieved political freedom. The next phase is for us to push hard for radical economic transformation. In line with the 2012 resolutions, which we must implement, the 2012 resolutions, Maroun spoke about the need for the state to have a state mining company, a state medical company, and also a radical economic transformation. So it's a matter of recalibrating and dusting off those resolutions and implementing. Lastly, Comrade JP, the tripartite alliance of the ANC, SACP, COSATU +1, SANCO remain the only vehicle, the tool at our disposal to accelerate transformation. Therefore, we need well-grounded, disciplined, well-focused cadres to ensure that we don't risk this revolution. Thank you very much, Comrade Chief.
Thank you, Comrade Patrick. Comrade Keith.
Comrades, thanks for all your interesting thoughts that you shared with everyone today. I'll just summarize with 3 points. The first is, this is Heritage Month, so look around your own town and list, say, the 3 worst examples of racists who are celebrated in statues or road names, and think of 3 heroes who ought to be celebrated but who are not. The second point I made is that in the Western Cape province in particular, we need to think very strategically about how we apply affirmative action so we can win victory in the Western Cape. The last point I made refers particularly to Western Cape, but is also relevant to other provinces, and that is the need to ensure our branches are a living African National Congress, they hold meetings, and that we manage to organize that a quorum comes to our AGM so we can elect the branch executives, and in turn we can hold the overdue Western Cape Provincial Conference. Mandla.
Away too. Thank you very much, Comrade Keith. Comrade JP, I hand over back to you. Take it away.
Oh, thanks, Comrade Brian. Thank you very much, really, for steering us towards the end. Comrades, to all of you who were part of today's session, thank you for joining us again. Comrades, we are back at it next week from 12 to 2 o'clock again. So we're hoping that you'll be able to join us. We'll be now focusing on the Kingdom, KwaZulu-Natal, looking at the Free State also, and also the place where the sun rises in Mpumalanga. So if you could all please be part of that. Just 1 or 2 other comments I want to make in closing. We will ask our speakers to assist us with write-ups of the presentations. This will be loaded on Facebook, as I said at the beginning, and really we are trying to build a body of political education material that those also who come after us can always refer back on and say, oh, this is what they were thinking. Let's show them that we can improve on whatever they're thinking were. So Comrade Patrick Mabilo, Fezegan Komonye, and Keith Kochwak, that's the challenge, my leaders, from you. Please, if you can assist in that regard. Comrades, we are still in the midst of COVID-19. I have to emphasize that it is not over, right? Please don't fool yourself by thinking because the president has announced level 1, now it means it's all systems go, it doesn't matter. People can still die from it. We are doing overall well as a country, notwithstanding the unfortunate deaths, but still we have to be very careful. Like someone else was saying, you should be clear that every time you leave your safe space, you are actually taking life-threatening decisions. And that really has to be the attitude that we all adopt. And also, we are encouraging everybody, go to www.orchamberschool, go to register for a course, go to prerequisite courses and complete that course. If you have to ask me, I'll tell you that the wave is moving very strongly towards a direction that says to lead in the ANC, you need to have done some of a particular level of the school's courses. So rather start now, get those courses behind you. Don't be that comrade who, you know, whether at whatever level in organization, we think that we are really very competent. But when we have to look criteria-wise whether you comply, we find that you don't comply because you have not made the effort to complete the course. The courses are completely free, so you can't complain about cost and so on. And then last but not least, comrades, everything OR Tamil School does is done for free, by the way. I mean, these UMRABULO sessions we hold and all of these things, but the reality of the life we live in is that everything is costly. So the school itself has gone on an effort to try to mobilize some donations towards its efforts. So if you go also to the school's website, www.ortamoschool.org.za, you'll see a button there that says donate to us. We please appeal that to the extent that you can try and make some contribution towards the school. So we can have sessions like this and many more. We are likely to make some announcements tomorrow about what I think is a very interesting session coming up on Thursday. I can't say much yet because one or two confirmations still must be made, but please be on the lookout for that. Other than that, my leaders, Comrade Brian, thank you very much, able as always, and have a good day for my leaders. Amanda.
Away to.